Ladies and gentlemen, this is your final boarding call for the good ship SS Tomorrow.
Today on The Friendly Futurist, visions of the year 2169. And welcome back here on the good ship SS Tomorrow. And we've got a bit of a treat for the summer break while we wait for other guests to come on board. We've got an exciting year ahead here on the good ship SS Tomorrow. We've got John Carlos, and he's a science fiction author based in Canberra. He's also a former Royal Australian Air Force officer, and he's coming out with a book called Cryonic Dreams. And yes, we've had science fiction, we've had like really distant visions of the future on this podcast before. Go back to Lee Schneider back to season 9, episodes 4 and 5, or JJ Jerome, season 13, episode 10. Now, John talks about, in his book Cryonic Dreams, about a dystopian future that echoes a lot about today. Now, remember what Mark Twain says, the future doesn't repeat, it often rhymes. A prolonged pandemic, tech oligarchs, uneven society between the haves and the has-beens. Sounds eerily familiar. We could be in dystopia right now. We just probably aren't aware of it yet. Now, a small disclaimer. Back when the time of recording in November 2025, I was recording in a studio with aging equipment, and some of it may have failed throughout the interview, and it's not of as high quality I would like it. So I do really apologise ahead for any lapse in quality in the audio. I really take my audio seriously, and this was a lapse in judgment on my behalf, and I do apologise to you. Anyhow, John, it's coming up after the break. And welcome back. And we've got a very special episode, and I have previously put on science fiction because I think sometimes science fiction does, in fact, lead to inspirational science fact. Now, I've got a science fiction writer, John Carlos, and he's going to talk about a book, and we talk about all things psionics and other things. It's going to be a dystopian future, but just remember, the future is not unwritten yet. So, John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show.
Pleasure's all mine. Now, as with all my guests, can you just give us a quick rundown on your journey so far and start wherever you want to start?
Well, it's been a while in the making. I mean, I'm coming from a military background where writing is very specific, very strategic. And then turning to writing, which is something I've always wanted to do, and only really getting the opportunity until I retired, which is 5 years ago. I did some courses, and to make that mindset shift from that strategic thinking to and writing to a more creative style. And then I started to unload all the ideas in my head. So I'm happy to tell you about the book if you want.
Yep, by all means.
Okay. Well, Cryonic Dreams, I've tried to make it a gripping science fiction epic that explores what happens when humanity stands on the edge of radical transformation. It's set in a future which has been engineered by global elites and their ultimate intent to control the entire population. So, it's a rather dark, dystopian future, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
At the heart of the story is Dr. Michelle Brown, the main protagonist. She's a brilliant but damaged scientist whose breakthrough in cryonics promises to change the course of medicine. But even as Michelle is poised to succeed, everything appears to conspire against her, and she quickly finds herself caught in a web of sabotage, institutional betrayal, and the shadowy ambitions of those who pull the strings. Michelle fights to protect her research and her revived patient, Marianne Kendricks, whose true identity is wrapped in a centuries-old secret. She is forced to confront not just the technical and ethical challenges of reanimating someone who was deceased, but also the relentless interference of powerful agencies and corporations.
Wow.
And it's been fun writing.
Yeah.
These aren't just obstacles, they're part of a much larger system designed to suppress innovation and keep humanity firmly under control. The story unfolds against a backdrop of a 2 decades-long pandemic, artificial intelligence, humanoid robots, and off-world colonies, so it's all in there. The machinery of a new world order built to serve the ambitions of those in power at the expense of the general population. Michelle's journey, along with her friends Marianne, Jackson, Holly, and others, are very much meant to be a microcosm of humanity's struggle against tyranny and the unseen forces controlling our society. What I think makes the story compelling is that it asks the big questions. It's not just about the science of crimes or the future technologies, but about the moral responsibilities that come with power, the ethical dilemmas of manipulating life and identity, and the consequences of surrendering autonomy to systems built to dominate. I consistently put the characters in circumstances where they must continually choose between compliance and resistance, comfort and conviction, survival and truth. And to finish off, as awakening draws to a close, Michelle and her companions are driven from a collapsing earth, pursued by the agency who is determined to suppress the truth and rewrite themselves into global control. They escape to Mars, carrying with them not just the secrets of the past, but the hope that resistance, reflection, and the refusal to be defined by others can still shape the future.
Wow. That's a lot. Well, I guess in your world, first and foremost, I guess that Mars has been terraformed, set.
Well, it's in the process of being terraformed.
Yeah.
When the events of the story take place. But in the first book, there is a chapter that's devoted to Mars, in the early Mars.
Yeah.
And you see the two extremes, basically. So, but yes, it is in the process of being terraformed.
Can we just take a step back? Where did this inspiration for this story or this world come from in the first place?
It came, it's a funny story because the kernel of the idea, as in a woman being chronically reanimated, came from a nightmare I had.
Okay.
Yeah. Many years ago, I having a bad dream, but I saw this woman getting out of a chamber into a dark room and stepping forward. And at some point in that nightmare, as nightmares go, you end up swapping places with, I ended up swapping places with this woman and walking across the dark room towards the dark. And there were these hands coming up from the floor out of the darkness and trying to grab my legs, and the words, you don't belong, repeated over and over again. But when I woke up, whatever it was, I thought, should I collect on you for it?
Yeah.
So I used it as the kernel for chronic dreams.
Yeah. And just take another step back, and I know a few of my listeners aren't quite tech savvy. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what chronics are? It's like I'm 12.
Right. Well, I'm not an expert as such. And what I do know comes from the research I did. Okay. So cryonics is, by another name, is cryogenics.
Yeah.
And it's the process of preserving organs or organisms, biological organisms, through the process of cryopreservation, through cold storage.
Yeah.
And that's, we currently do it for IVF and that sort of thing. So we do have a successful style of cryopreservation. It's just that complex organisms are a lot harder to freeze. And even today, there's a lot of experimentation going on about how to freeze the body without destroying it in the process. Because normally what happens is when you freeze the body, ice crystals form between cells and they destroy and rush out the cell walls. So the biological structures are destroyed in the process, which is not what you want if you want to wake up at some point.
Yes, right.
So but they are experimenting a lot with different cryoprotectants, as they call them, which is the fluid they infuse the body with and take out the blood. And also they're using gases to pump into the body to protect those microstructures from being destroyed by the freezing process.
Yeah.
They form clathrates or matrices. So if you look at somebody who was frozen in using these methods, then you'd see that they don't have the icy appearance. They might look paler, but they still look soft and they just look like they're asleep.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. And I think, too, there's a lot of popular culture, too, in other science fiction work, Fry from Futurama, that film Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone, Austin Powers. Now, there's always been these cryogenic concepts. There's that, there's a Mel Gibson film, Forever Young, as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of...
It has been available in popular fictions come out a number of times. I myself, the first time I ever came across it was a science fiction novel. I'm not even sure who the writer was. But in that story, the protagonist freezes himself for 30 years and then is greeted by his great-granddaughter, later in life. So it's been around for a while, and the science is still there. It's not, a lot of people don't treat it seriously, but I think it's just it's inevitable that science will continue and find a lot of solutions to this.
Yeah, and I guess too, if we were ever to, say, travel into deep space far into the distant future, cryonics or cryogenics is stuff we probably need to look at, because we don't want to spend thousands upon thousands of years and
generational
shifts. Yeah, no, we need to have some sort of deep sleep too.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just the laws of physics. We can't.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the premise of cryonics in the story actually starts with the need for interstellar travel and the need for cryogenics to support interstellar travel. So even though the story follows Dr. Brown and the patient, the original purpose of the project in the story is to support interstellar travel, which is why they got the approval.
Yeah, well. And also in this world of yours, 2169, you're talking about top-down sustainability morphing to velvet glove control. Can you please elaborate what this means?
Sorry, say it again.
You're talking about the top-down being having more of a velvet glove control. Can you just elaborate what this means?
The control by your limbs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea of people in power to come up with ideas that sound very virtual, very virtuous and noble, but have a darker meaning or a darker outcome as a result. So that's the term velvet comes from. So it's an application of a noble idea with dire consequences or dire outcomes.
Sounds like in today's timeline too, these tech billionaires, for example, looking into transhumanism.
Yes.
Like the likes of Jeff Bezos wants to live for a couple of centuries. And it's that's sort of...
Yes. Yeah. The story touches obviously on extending life. And there's a lot of science into extending life right now. Cryonics is just a way of stopping your life clock at one point and restarting it again at another point. Potentially when, they might have cures, for example, for some diseases. Now, at the moment, you have to be deceased to be cryopreserved.
Yeah.
But in the future, that might not be the case. But it depends. There are a lot of legal and ethical issues around this whole thing. Because what happens with your stuff if you get cryopreserved?
That's right.
Does it still belong to you? Does it get held in some sort of system to be, reactivated once you awake? There's a lot of questions surrounding this, and
yes,
I don't go into answering any of those. I'm just using it. It's also a metaphor, the whole chronic stasis in the story, because the protagonist, Marianne, who gets frozen, has a secret, as I mentioned before. She carries a secret with her. And that secret comes from the past. She was before she was frozen. And it gets reawakened once she's actually reanimated, because there is elements of power that know where she's come from and don't want her secret to come out, or the truth to come out.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I guess from the ethical point of view, it's this technology only available for the elites, or can it be, applied for everyone? I think that's the
technology. Cryonics.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to think that it might become available to everybody, but we face an interesting dilemma in this day and age when we're heading towards robotics and AI.
Yeah.
And at some point I see the robotics will automate the entire industrial base. Right? And at that point, I think those people in power, those people with the wealth, are going to own the wealth of the world for the rest of 2020.
Yeah.
Everybody else is going to be probably have to survive on some sort of universal basic income and never be able to afford much of anything at all, only what's offered to them.
Yeah.
So in that backdrop, I cannot see that things like this would be offered to everybody.
Yeah.
In fact, it would be a domain of the rich and the wealthy. And as scary as that is, that's the future I see coming.
Well, I think the next big question is there things we can do, you say, in our timeline now that we can actually, what course of action we can take today? It's probably to stop avoid this utopian vision that you'd have in 140 years' time.
I'd like to think so. And, the future is not set.
That's right.
And I have to share with you how I came across this dystopian future, because when I was thinking about what the setting was going to be, I was thinking, how do we get from today, our reality, if you like, to an environment or a setting like I've created in future, or what I want in the future? So what I did, and you can find this on my website, is create a mind map. And it's a mind map of all those variables that affected human progress over time. And with that, I looked at the main global events or variables, and I created a timeline, basically.
Okay.
So, and that's also on my website.
Yeah.
Now, it's a timeline of these global events. The timing I picked basically on my own knowledge of trending technologies, taking a systems approach and a strategic look at the future. And so in setting a time, I looked at those and asked, are these things, becoming faster and faster, or are they slowing on? And that way I was able to say, well, I think it might happen in 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
So, but not just alone with that. Then once I had a timeline, I was able to group those together, and I came up with what I call the key variables framework. And it's a set of events which have driving influences. And when I put those together, and overlaid them over today, I was actually blew my mind at how close it came to some of the things we see happening today, coming out of the United Nations and other areas where people, it seems, appear to be trying to assert their control. So, in effect, what I was doing was modelling what the future might look like.
Yep.
And it was quite scary. The outcome was quite scary. And I hope it doesn't happen that way at all. But according to my mind map, there's only 3 possible outcomes of our future. One is global conflict. The second is global governance. And should we manage to avoid all those, then we might be lucky and have a second enlightenment.
Okay, wow.
That's what I call it.
Yeah. I'm for one, I am in favour of second enlightenment. Yeah. That's interesting because actually usually a renaissance does follow a pandemic. So,
right. Yeah, exactly. In the timeline I've got, there is another pandemic coming in 45. That's the year I picked for it. And when the story is set in 2169, as I said, it's a 2 decades long pandemic which started in 2148. And that's not, I'm not saying that, pandemics are a thing of our future. Potentially, they could be. And what's worse is they can be also a weapon used by someone.
Yeah, well, it's a great future. Yeah, it's very scary thing. Yeah. It's always, pandemics, famines, or war. It's usually in the classic set is the 3 main arch enemies of the human race. Yeah. Well, very interesting. Enjoying our chat here this afternoon, John. Is there anything I didn't ask but should?
Well, did you? I mean, we did speak earlier about the technologies. In chronic dreams, happy to go through some of those.
Yeah, we do. So, by all means.
So some of them you'll just naturally assume are part of our future. But I've got a list here of the ones that come in predominantly. Obviously, we've spoken about cryogenic animation, and I see that becoming potentially a reality by the end of this century. And we do already have organisations using cryonics. Our core Life Extension Foundation. You've got neural tissue preservation, synthetic biology, and nanomedicine. These are all sciences relating to cryonics. Then you've got nanite technology, which is fundamental in the story. Things like nanite biomedical application and biopolymers as nanoparticles. The nanite biomedical application is, like I used them in the story, for cellular and DNA repair. And if you know the industrialist Ray Kurzweil, he's actually talked about using nanots to repair the body. That's been around for a little while. And I think one of the reasons I chose to use the story, because I think it has real potential, and I mean, they're always working on these things now, so I have no doubt that we will see some of these sciences come out in the future. So we've got, I've got a couple of examples here.
Please.
DNA nanobots are being developed to deliver drugs and repair cells. These are real-world examples of parallels. CRISPR-Cas9 allows for precise gene editing. Biopolymer scaffolding is used in regenerative medicine. And National Library of Medicine nanoparticle-mediated delivery of cryoprotectants for cryopreservation. So there's just a couple of examples of the use of the current experimentation and things around nanobots. Well, obviously the big one that's very much in our face these days is artificial intelligence. And in the story, I've got a whole swag of them because they are our future. And I like the idea of artificial intelligence as a tool, right? And I know a lot of people are concerned about the possibilities of AI in the future. And if we use it as a tool and continue to remind ourselves that they are a tool and take a step back, always taking a step back and being critical of what we are doing, then we can reap the benefits of having artificial intelligence. But it's also if we don't take a step back and if we're not critical about these things, we will lose ourselves.
Yeah.
And the artificial intelligence will start modifying our behaviour. And we don't know that.
No, exactly right. It is a tool, like kitchen knife is a tool.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, or a screwdriver is a tool, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's good because that's I totally agree. It should never be used to replace us. It should be used to help us. Sometimes I think that artificial intelligence in a way, AI in a way, can save us from ourselves.
Yeah.
But we have to have that balance. Otherwise,
that's exactly right. And which is what I mean by taking a step back and being critical of what we are doing. We need to understand what we're doing and looking at and questioning what we're doing and ask ourselves, is it the step in the right direction? Is it supporting me or am I supporting it? So, and we've got to maintain that strict control over it. I've also got very much in the digital space, I've got surveillance infrastructure and predictive governance. I mean, we see these days there's cameras everywhere and people talk about AI supported surveillance and what we do online and in our everyday. So I think this is and as much as it might serve to keep out criminal elements, we've also got to be careful that, again, it doesn't start to control who we are as people and our human race. So, one thing they're working on is predictive governance, AI-driven systems, infiltration of all communications, covert surveillance and predictive behaviour modelling for maximal and potentially preemptive responses. So it's scary because you might find yourself being arrested for something you haven't done yet. And
that's very, very minority report.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these things are already being worked on. So it's not like that's some science fiction boogeyman.
Yeah.
This is becoming a reality, and it's not far away where they will be deployed. If they're not already deployed.
And also, my concern is the bias too. If it can racially profile a certain section of society, and a lot of innocent people's lives could just be ruined just because some white dude or some other who's probably programming it has that sort of. It's a can of worms that should. It
should never have been tried as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to win that argument.
No.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, well, my other concern is the use of microchips. If it's in that predicted.
Absolutely. Well, we're already hearing about electronics coming out of China.
Yeah.
So they have kill switches and listening devices. And electronics can be made that small these days where but it looks like it's part of the electronics systems that, don't make it work, but they're actually extras. And you can imagine your society one day coming to a stop because China says, no, we're taking over now. Or whoever, I'm not saying just then there are enough people in the world with the ideological need or want to do something like that.
Yeah. Or worse, your thoughts get sold to advertisers. Yes.
So let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Knock on wood.
I've also got in the book there's I make reference to holographic interfaces. So everything in the chronic dreams is a holographic. So there's not a computer screen. It's a holographic image produced by the artificial intelligence that you normally have running the organisation. So one of the better ones that I've got is in the medical space, where they fuse AI with microscopy and another imaging system so that the AI can recreate an image down to molecular level. And I explore that in the book as well. I think that's fascinating, and if it can be done, it will open up medicine a great deal more. There are some real-world examples of, this sort of fusion.
Yeah.
Well, the most obvious one is Microsoft HoloLenses. And the other thing I use in the book is augmented reality, which is what Microsoft HoloLenses are all about. And Meta's Quest Pro offer mixed reality workspaces. So augmented reality as well as normal physical items. Light Film Lab is developing solid-state holographic displays and ultraleap and tactile holograms research touchable holograms using ultrasonic waves. So the sciences are there.
Yeah.
And all I've done is just extrapolate these sciences into the future. Some of the technology I used in the book may, in fact, be outdated ones in terms of some of your science.
Yeah.
And the rate they're moving. But I try to look at it a little bit more simplistically, because there are technologies we may not even understand yet, or not even able to conceive at this moment. And I just hope that whatever technology we come up with, again, that we are critical in how we use it and how we apply it.
Yeah. Well, I guess too, now you're talking 140 years now, Jules Verne did not see Wi-Fi, so no, that's right. So yeah. Anyhow, John, before we wrap things up, where can we find your book? Is it coming out on the shelves yet? And
it's best is to look on Amazon. It's available on Amazon. It is available through other outlets, but I don't think, because I chose the American market for a reason, because it's bigger. So you probably won't find the book on many shelves in Australia. So, which is why you should go to Amazon.
Yep.
And look there. I've also got, if anyone's interested, I've also got the book through my website, and for a little bit of extra fee, I will sign the book myself.
Fantastic. I'm quite sure quite a few future heads might take you up on that offer.
Sure.
John, thank you very much for coming in this afternoon, and it's been a great pleasure having you on board.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a pleasure being here.
It's all mine. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. The Friendly Futurist is a Podcast West production and has been produced and edited by me, Dave Monk. If you love this show, please leave us a 5-star review on your favourite platform. That way it can help me grow. Until next time, friends, remember to stay curious, and the future is user-friendly.
Another Podcasts West production.
This podcast is just for educational purposes and it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial planner or advisor. Please do your homework and seek professional help before you take on any adventures.